Okay, in this mad world in which we inhabit, it's not often that you get some good news or at least a flicker of hope. The light at the end of the tunnel can appear to be an oncoming train sometimes, but there was a ruling in the UK Supreme Court this week to do with gender. There are only two. It's official. It's made it through the courts, men and women. And today we're going to talk about what the implications of that could be with the one and only Jana Lunden from the Natural Women's Council of Ireland, because there's a National Women's Council of Ireland. And first of all, what's the difference?
Yeah, the NWCI, first of all, they're publicly funded. They're an NGO, and I like to refer to them as the National Identify as a Woman Council because they lobbied to erase woman and mother. They have a man in a dress who identifies as Sarah on their board, whereas the Natural Women's Council are grassroots. We really truly lobby to advocate for the rights of women, girls, and family, not push the government's woke agenda. And we don't get any public funding. We go out and shake the bucket and do what we can with what we get, and we do great work considering we get no funding. But the battle is being won, I think.
I think you're right, and you put a post up here, and we'll dive into this in a little bit of detail, especially how it relates to Ireland in particular, which is your current stomping
Mhm.
ground, your battleground, if you will, at the moment. So the post that you put up onto social media, let me just share it here for our viewers. So this is follow, by the way, Jana on Twitter or X if you use that platform at JK London Lunden. The headline here is woke is dying. But we can't let up now. Let's celebrate that the UK Supreme Court delivered a unanimous ruling affirming that terms woman and sex in the Equality Act refer specifically to biological sex. However, let the celebrations be short-lived. We are witnessing the last sting of a dying ideology. That's a fantastic sentence right there. The radical push for woke culture and social justice activism has infiltrated our schools and it's harming our children. So that's the headline. And I want to jump from that onto a reaction in Ireland. Okay, so this is published this morning on the wonderful state broadcasting propaganda arm RTE News. The Transgender Equality Network Ireland has said it is dismayed by the ruling in the UK, but encouraged by the fact that this narrative has not made its way to Ireland. And as you can see there, the little flag flying with the strapline underneath, UK sex ruling is a step back for human rights. Is it a step back for human rights, or is it a wake up for that, like smelling salts that has been applied to just common sense, really, and logic?
Yeah, it is. The question I put out a post this morning because I'm seeing a lot of the trans right activists and the hard left saying this is a violation of our human rights. We're being erased and this is unfair. And the post I put out this morning is, you know, it's not about taking away the rights of a trans identifying person. It's actually confirming a woman's rights. So a man can identify as anything he wants to identify as. We have men identifying as women, squirrels, and then
Mm-hmm.
everything in between. But it doesn't mean that I should accept that man in my toilets, my changing rooms, or playing against my little girl in sports. So a message I would have to those trans activists is if you feel that this declaring a woman's sex is biological and you're not allowed in our spaces, if that's a threat to you, ask why women having boundaries bothers you. You know, why having woman boundaries? Why does that bother the trans right activists? And it's the same question I have regarding what's getting pushed in education. You know, sexualizing children, indoctrinating children with a radical ideology that defies science and contradicts the Cass report. Why is that taking away the right of a trans identifying person to not sexualize children? And they've never been able to give me any sort of answer.
Mm. And you talk about schools, for example, is a real battleground at the moment. And of course, child from what, 4 years of age roughly goes into primary one. We would call it P1 up in the north, right the way through until they're 18 odd years of age. So you're talking 14 years a child will spend in school. Now, rewinding back to when I was a kid and I went to school in 1977, 1978, you were taught how to read, all right? You were taught how to write. with joined up letters, which I still can't do, by the way. We were taught basic mathematics. You might have played in the sandpit, went out and kicked the football around, got a field
Mhm.
trip down to a local museum. The concept or the notion or the idea that a teacher in a school classroom would even be talking about sexual issues or gender issues with a child from 4 years of age and upwards, where I lived, that person would have been visited by the local,
Correct.
community policing unit, let me just say, and they may
Yeah.
never have been seen again. So, how did it slip from that to where we are now, where effectively children are being indoctrinated into theories? Because, it's
Mhm.
an ideology, it's not a fact, as has been acknowledged
Yeah.
finally by the court. How did we slide to that point?
And we got to this point because our establishment in Ireland, and we partner as well. The Natural Women's Council has partnered now with groups in Australia, Canada, and US, and it's happening across the West. What's happened is the education and every aspect of society is being captured and dictated by a small group of uh, unelected globalists. And these are the United Nations. So UNESCO influences education. Anyone can look up the WHO standards of sexuality, the UNESCO documents, and the WEF. And if anyone wants to look up the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. They're those lovely, colorful pins that our
Mm-hmm.
politicians are wearing, and they're the signs in the garden where you see the pollination garden in the park or the library. But if you peel back the layers, no one's ever talking about what they mean. What is an SDG, a Sustainable Development Goal? That is the policy framework to push all of this in. So it's very clear once you do the back end research to see that our establishments are reporting up, not taking direction from the people, the parents, teachers, and students. So they've reported to the globalists, but the second thing is they've put together a carefully selected groups of people to influence academia, influence education. We did a podcast on this. The group that designed the junior cycle, and this is the junior cycle where the books, from what we uncovered recently, have had no sign off. The publisher can put what they want in there. 7 pages on masturbation, talking to children in group activities about rough, painful, and forced sex, which is violent rape. I mean, that's horrendous. They've been able to put it in the classroom, but the committee that influenced and developed the curriculum was a 13 woman only committee. They refused to let parent bodies on, such as the Catholic Secondary School Parent Association and many other parents and parent bodies that wanted to join the committee. They were shut out. Men were shut out. So this was a group of 13 radical, hard left liberal women that poisoned our children's education. And now they're working in governments, they're in the civil society. So you have your supranationals, your WHO, WEF, and United Nations. They drive it into civil society. The 32,000 NGOs on this island getting 6 billion a year, like Tenny and belong to go into schools for a week. They talk about things such as top surgery, bottom surgery, misgendering, and tucking to our children. So that's the lunacy. But hopefully, common sense will prevail. Ireland might lag behind a while, but hopefully, seeing what happened in the UK, they'll realize that a woman is born. We're not worn. We're not a costume.
Mhm. You mentioned belong to, I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but you and I spoke a couple of times the end of
Yeah.
last year, at the start of this year, concerning the events in Wilson's Hospital
Yes.
School with Enoch Burke. And at the time, this was going back to January 2025, they
Mhm.
had been striving as a
Yeah.
so-called faith school or a Church of Ireland school, whatever they operate under, whatever guise they operate under. They had been working in it and striving to attain the belong to stamp of approval, at
Yes.
the expense, I would say, of ostracizing and ousting a Christian teacher in the shape and
Mhm.
form of Enoch Burke. I think they have achieved that quality mark right now, while Burke has had his bank accounts emptied and spent
Yes.
over 500 days in Mountjoy prison. And now they're saying that if he comes back after the summer term, which is September, call it September 2025, they
Mhm.
may regrettably push to have him incarcerated again if he doesn't stay the
Mhm.
hell away from the school, which technically speaking, he was suspended there on full pay, but now they're stripping his payout. Again, this concept of a so-called Christian school with a Christian teacher going against one of their own to get
Yes.
the stamp of approval, which it literally is from an NGO that who knows how much money is being pumped into them to push this ideology in schools. Is this another example of maybe the maddest time in history, literally over the last 5 years? But right now, is it the death throes, do you think?
It is the maddest time that I've ever lived through. And, it's unbelievable that, we always heard follow the science, trust biology a few years ago when they were
Mm-hmm.
pushing all of the
Mm-hmm.
the shots on everybody, follow the science. Well, where's the science when it comes to biological sex? Where's the science when it comes to let's listen to those expert doctors that spent a few years working on the CAS report that was published in April 2024? The CAS report clearly says that socially transitioning children should not be done and pronouns should also not be done. It's not a neutral territory. So, why aren't the departments of education following medical expert advice? At our conference last 2 weekends ago, we had a doctor speak there, medical doctor, Dr. Vincent Carroll, and he raised a very valid question. When a child is harmed and the school has neglected to follow the science and the medical advice, and there's no risk assessments. We have freedom of information requests. This is not risk assessed, letting these activists in school or teaching transgender ideology. When it goes wrong and a child is harmed and someone wants to take a lawsuit, will the schools or that principal's insurance cover them if they so egregiously neglected to follow medical advice? So that's where you get into really slippery territory.
I want to look at that conference that you had because there was a lot of shenanigans and skullduggery involved in that. Not from your end, by the way. It wasn't you
Yeah.
was causing the shenanigans, but let's just say opposition that was
Yeah.
mounted against it by certain groups. But before we go there, just really quick, and this is for the benefit of people maybe that are listening in from outside of Ireland at the minute. I want to look at, for example, this is just to give people a flavour. This is apologies for that jarring photograph, by the way. But this is an Irish politician who goes under the name of Regina Doherty or Doherty, depending on where you come from. This woman, I think, is an MEP. She's a member of the European Parliament. She believes there are at least nine genders. Now, if that person was to approach me in the street and say, there's nine genders, I would probably phone the police and explain that a mad person was walking the streets, probably had lost control of their faculties. But no, she says it literally with a smile on her face, and she's not alone. This is an article that was taken from end of last year when Helen McEntee was the then Justice Minister and now is unbelievably the Minister for Education. This menace is involved with what children are learning in schools. Then the Irish Minister for Justice, Helen McEntee, was trying to affirm that there were 72 genders, okay, legal status to 72 genders. Now, I don't know about you, right? I can't believe in my head that these two women actually believe this guff that they're spouting. I just don't believe that they believe it. That's my own take. And therefore, you say, well, why would they say it then? Why would they say it then? Unless, palms were being greased, pieces of
Yeah,
silver were being exchanged, Jana, or little brown envelopes were going around. Now, that's just my belief. I'm not saying that
yeah.
that's the
I,
case. What do
I
you
think
think?
it's either money. So I look at MICE, which is how people can be compromised. It's either money, or they're truly ideologues, or they're really compromised and blackmailed, or they just want to have an ego. They want to be the best girls in class. But I would put out a warning to everyone here in County Meath. These two ladies, Regina, nine gender Doherty, and McEntee, 72 gender minister, they don't live far away from each other in Meath. I live in Meath, and I'm starting to wonder because of these two ladies, but everyone else in Meath who voted for them. Is there something in the water here we need to avoid? I mean, these women need their head give their head a wobble.
With no offence to Meath voters as well, but if the last election is to be believed, McEntee actually increased her vote
Oh,
share after the rampage she went on as Justice Minister, lying through her teeth about the safety of Dublin, for example, and the borders, and coming out with the 72 genders. And you mentioned that mice, it could be this, it could be this. Some of these people, maybe it's all four. Is it unrealistic to think that it's money, their integrities have been compromised, their
mm,
ideologues,
mhm.
and their ego's involved. Maybe that's the frightening
All of it.
position. They're all of the above.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So the cancel culture, you wanted to talk about what happened. So in Ireland, obviously, Miss McEntee was trying to push through the hate speech bill. She got the hate crime bill through and put in the 72 genders to give the man in a dress more protection than myself. She's trying to put through the hate speech bill. It's her pet project there. That would allow us to be criminalized for a meme on our phone or anything on our device that hurts somebody's feelings. So in Ireland now, the self-declared kind and inclusive group, the hard left, I refer them now to them as hard left extremist or terrorist because what they have done to me in five, nearly six occasions is I had an event booked. They do a pylon campaign on social media, and this is their Irish followers, but they also put it out to their international groups. We saw this coming from America and the UK, where they asked them to call and email the venue to cancel these conferences, which are promoting hate speech. They're transphobic, racist, bigots, climate deniers, anti-vaxxers, whatever they like to throw in. So they organize a campaign, very small group of people. They don't even have large followings at all, but they harass and torment a venue to the point where the venue will pull the plug on conferences at the last minute. So this group, which is meant to be kind and inclusive, who call us fascist, they feel it's up to them to dictate who can meet, who can have debates and discussions, and who can rent a room at a hotel. It's beyond belief. And the solicitor letter, which I got from Johnstown Estate in Meath, which I will never recommend anybody visit that hotel, they pulled us days before, stating that it was because they got 200 vociferous emails threatening a protest. They knew what our conference was about. I'd met them numerous times, numerous emails, had a site visit with them the Friday before, and they still pulled the plug. They knew all of our speakers. They had all their bios. To prevent the conference from being canceled, knowing it was they were getting a little bit fearful, they said, for their health and safety. I went to the Garda, the police here in Ireland, on the Friday, a week ahead before the conference, to say this is the harassment that's happening online to threaten the venue. The Garda called one of these left extremists to tell her to stop. She doubled down. I went back to the Garda 2 days later on Mother's Day and met with the sergeant and explained the situation. But Monday night, the conference was pulled, and we would have been left out of pocket a significant amount of money, over €20,000, if you add up the flights, hotels, AV equipment hired, and all of that. Luckily, we did move to another venue, but these hard left terrorists found that venue the night before when we didn't even announce it, and they started terrorizing them the Friday night before. They even broke in our conference room an hour before the conference opened and started taking pictures of the room, including pictures of myself. So what I'm doing now is I have a strategic approach on how to really handle this cancel culture, because these terrorists, the same group, canceled 4 of my conferences in 2023 and festivals totaling €75,000 in damages, in losses that I've not gotten back. So what I'm doing now is I have 4 pulse numbers from the Garda. These pulse numbers are in the areas where the hotels have been canceled. I've shown them the harassment. A pulse number's been opened. I also have a pulse number for a credible death threat I got. So it's not just a cancel culture issue. It's a public order issue, threatening hotels, asking people to incite hate against me, where I'm getting death threats. So how is the Garda going to handle this? What side are the Garda going to take? I'm going to follow that through. It's going to be raised in Parliament to Minister for Justice Jim O'Callaghan, and I'm going to be writing a letter to every TD to explain the crimes happening on the soil with these so-called kind, inclusive terrorists. So I'm going to see it through to the end, because it's 5 years now with cancel culture, and it's not up to anybody to dictate what you and I are allowed to say. That is fascism and terrorism.
It is. And just listening to you talk there, while you were talking, I was racking my brains thinking, okay, I'm trying to think of a lefty event that right wing extremists or
Never.
nasty fascists
Hmm.
have went out of their way to hassle the venue, to gate crash the venue, to wreck the venue, to get a public campaign. We just let them do their
Let them
little
at it.
thing, because I
Yeah.
don't believe, when I say they're not a threat, they are to an extent, but their mindset, you can tell they're not 100%. They're not the lights are on, but there's no one at home. Let them. Someone should say, we should just put them onto an island and let them get on with it. But kind of that is what's happening in Ireland at the minute. They are on an island and they are getting on with it, but hopefully not for much longer. And is that not another example of gaslighting, where they will stand outside your venue with pickets
Hmm.
banging on drums and screaming, almost frothing
Yeah.
at the mouth,
Yeah.
pointing at you, threatening your life,
Yeah.
getting a hate campaign going, and then say you're the hateful one, and you're standing there.
Yeah.
I've
And
never seen you
And,
exhibit
and
hatred.
the question I have for the hard left is if they really thought our event was about being hateful, transphobic, racist, and bigoted, why didn't they book a ticket? Or I would have given them a complimentary one. They could have come in and filmed the whole conference and then gone to the Garda to say, this group is spreading hate. They didn't do that, but we did. We filmed the whole event and we're going to publish every single speech. We'll even send those speeches to Johnstown Hotel to show them what event they canceled. So we have nothing to hide. So they just continue to spout lies. It's all based on ideology. They have no facts and they have no evidence. Like you said, the lights are on, but there's nothing in between.
There's not. And you said something at the start of this conversation as well, and I just want to rewind back to it because I parked it in my head. You said at the beginning, and I feel exactly the same way. If a man wants to think or pretend or dress up like a lady, that's up to him. If he's doing it in his own time and he's not hurting anyone or putting it on to anybody else, crack on. It's not the sort of thing I would partake in myself. But anyway, if that's your business, then you go and do it. But don't expect me to acknowledge it.
Mhm.
So whenever events are organized, like you
Mhm.
organized, and they're saying it's pushing hatred and it's squashing people down, it's really not. You're saying, live your life, do what you want to do, but leave our kids the hell alone. And don't
Yeah.
expect me to buy into your mindset, whatever that mindset is. You do you, I do me, and
Mhm.
don't. Same way as you're not forcing people to acknowledge you as something. You might
Yes.
request it, but whether or not they do it or not, that's up to them. But it's this pushing. Do you think that could be? Do you
Yeah.
think that's what their downfall is really? Way. I don't know if you've ever worked in sales before, but there's nothing worse than a pushy salesperson. And a salesperson could have on the brink of a sale, all right, and then they just keep
Yeah.
needling and needling, and then you know what? Just forget about it. Just forget.
Yeah.
Do you think they've got overstepped the mark? They're just too pushy. They're too demanding. They should have just eased off a little bit and incrementally crept in there. Instead, they're going in full force. Is that going to be their downfall?
I think there's a lot of downfalls. I mean, people are starting to realize that, men cannot breastfeed, men cannot get pregnant. And when people are stepping out of the trance they might have been in over the last 5 years, they're realizing the lunacy of it. Like, who could have ever thought that a man could get pregnant? Who would have ever thought that it's kind to medically and chemically castrate a little boy? So they're starting to realize as they're kind of coming awake that this is actually really insane. It's insanity. So I think that's part of it is reality is starting to kick in. And the second thing is they're seeing these men for the narcissists they are, forcing women to believe in their ideology, forcing themselves in our toilets, beating our women in the sports. And for all the moms and dads who have a little girl, they're coming up saying, I don't want my daughter to be beaten by a man who says he's a girl or a woman. That's totally unfair and it's unsafe. So I think reality's kicking in and the narcissism and aggression and anger from this hard extreme left has gone way too far.
One other light, I suppose you could say, the glimmer of hope is I'm starting to see more women in women's sports events just walk off the pitch or refuse to compete against men. And I always felt that that's how to stop this dead in its tracks. If women refuse to compete when there's a man on the pitch or at the
Mhm.
snooker table or at the darts podium or wherever it happens to be in the
Yeah.
swimming pool, if the women all refuse to compete, it would
Yeah.
kill it dead and the spectators that come to these events as well.
Yes.
And I think it was recently, and again, if you know this and I'm making a mistake, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a snooker championship, or was it a women's snooker championship where the two people in the final were both men. Okay, so there was two
Yes.
men competing against each other
Yeah.
in a women's snooker. So
They just made it a man's sport. They just erased women's sport. And in Ireland, we've had some groups like the Rugby Association has done a 180. They do not allow men to play against women in rugby. Same with basketball. So, there's some that have had sense. But the Gaelic Athletic Association, the
Mm,
Ladies Gaelic Football Association, the LGFA, we've done letter campaigns to them, and they are still allowing men to compete against women in the Gaelic football. So that is really unfair. Gaelic football is quite a physical
mhm,
game. It's quite contact, and it's unfair. But the GAA, I believe, is captured, as well as all of the youth groups.
mhm,
The scouts, the youth groups are a real risk. The scouts came out and announced that
mhm.
with their transgender policy, a man who identifies as a woman can have the same supervisory rights as a woman over our little girls in scouts. So does that mean on their weekend sleepovers or their changing rooms that a man can be in there with our girls and the scouts? I mean, that is a serious safety issue. And regardless of what the trans activists say, it allows the predators to come in. So not all people identifying as trans are predators, but with this, it allows predators and bad actors to infiltrate our girls' spaces.
And again, but with the LGFA, the Ladies Gaelic Football Association, this could be dealt with in what they surely the numbers of these men who
Mhm.
want to compete against girls and women on there can't be that many of them. So is it not a case of the entire organization? And I don't have the numbers, but I would imagine, at every LGFA match, there isn't. I don't think there's a man on the field at every event. There might be a handful nationally, but the whole damn organization is
Yeah,
almost bowing down to what
yeah,
the mental demands of a few people. Surely this
yeah,
could be dealt with by say a letter goes out and say, right, if there's a man on the pitch, the women don't go on. Simple. And the spectator, you
yeah.
don't come and see it. What's that going to leave? One big hairy dude, in a tutu, standing looking around, go, where is everyone?
Yeah,
You crack on, mate. There's
you
an
crack
open
up.
goal.
Play up,
There's an
play by
open goal.
yourself.
Play. You
Yeah,
just take it all on yourself.
yeah,
You think that would kill it dead? And why
it
is it
would.
not happening? Is this cancel culture fear and this worrying about oh, I don't want to be labeled phobic this and phobic that? Is
Yeah.
that still there? But it's also maybe melting a little bit.
It's melting a bit, but people still have this fear of speaking up and fear of breaking the silence. And, it's only recently in the last year where I've had a lot of other mothers come up to me at maybe the swimming club my daughter swims at, or the athletic pitch, or the rugby club, where they come up and say, I follow you. I support what you're doing. A year ago, they would have turned the other way and run like, I had
Mm-hmm.
leprosy or something. So it is starting to crumble, but there's too many women out there who are cowards.
Yeah.
There's too many women out there, the mummies at the school gate who want to be cool and want to be kind. They're waving all the flags. They do not want to be othered. They don't want to be the mom that doesn't get invited out to cocktail nights, because I know how that feels. They don't want to be the mom who doesn't get play dates for their children. I know how that feels. But what I would say to those mothers is, what's more important, your popularity or the safety of your child?
Amen.
So get over yourself. It's not
Amen.
about you and your popularity. This is your child. Do your job as a mother.
That's another, and we'll kind of wrap it up on that. That mentality again is part of this lunatic period in which we live.
Mhm.
That a parent, whether it be a father or a mother, is more concerned about what the other daddies and mummies think than the
Yeah.
mental and physical safety and protection of their own child. Whatever
Yes.
time in history would you have thought that, well, I'm worried that, I won't be invited to dinner with Mrs. X and Mr.
Mhm.
Y if I speak out against something that I know is destroying my child's mind and possibly my body. I better just keep quiet because I don't want to get cancelled.
And if you speak up, that's toxic masculinity, because
Mm,
that was being pushed, toxic masculinity, don't speak up. So what they've done is they've emasculated the men, turned them into all, soy boys, and they don't even dare to speak up for their girls and their boys. They sit cowardly, shaking, their balls trickling down their
mhm,
trouser legs. Then the women have gone so woke that they want to have their little trans identifying child or furry. I saw a furry
mm,
conference, kids running around dressed like squirrels. Your kid is not a squirrel. Your
mm.
child does not need a litter box. So it's time for parents to realize they're not their children's pal. They're the parent, and they need to have boundaries and show that child respect, responsibility, and self acceptance.
And if you have a child out there, here's a little bit of advice, parenting advice from me. If you do have a child out there that identifies as a squirrel, one way to deal with that problem is you just feed them hazelnuts and nothing
That's
else.
it.
So, Mom, what's for breakfast? Hazelnuts. I want French. No, squirrels don't eat French toast, they eat hazelnuts. Okay,
Yeah,
once
that,
send them the lunchbox in, they open it up, it's
yeah.
fully hazel. I want the hams. No, squirrels don't eat
Nuts.
ham sandwiches. They eat hazelnuts. What's for dinner?
Yeah.
I want a McDonald's. I
And
want a
they could go
pizza.
sleep in a tree.
Hazelnuts.
Put them
And
out in the trees.
maybe on your birthday you can have a pizza base, but there'll be hazelnuts on top of it. That's what I'm saying. Just this, the fact that this is a thing now is bad, but going back full circle to what you said, woke is dying. I believe it is, and I believe we're starting to see the death throes. And as it dies, you're going to see a harder kickback on it. But you know what? Let them do what they can. We know we're right. I
Yeah.
believe we're right, and we know we're doing what's right for our kids. I want to believe the
Yes.
people that are listening to this are doing what's right for their kids too. And if there is someone listening and you're maybe are, because some people are more, how would you say, extroverted and more, not afraid of confrontation than others. Some people do feel that pressure. You're not alone. All right, you're not alone, and always do what's right for your child. And to contact them with you, Janet, the Natural Women's Council of Ireland,
Mhm.
I will put the details of your website in the description box underneath this video. Okay, so there'll be a link through there to your website,
Mhm.
and you've got all the details there about what you're about, how people can connect with you. And I'm sure if there's a mother listening and she wants to reach out
Yeah,
for some advice, I'm sure she
absolutely.
can come to you. Would that be a first statement?
Absolutely. I get hundreds of emails. I respond to every single one every day that I can throughout the night. And we're launching our biggest campaign ever. We have a letter design that's going out soon, a leaflet, and also we're developing a parent guide. Our volunteers are working on a parent guide. So if anyone listening feels lost and overwhelmed, maybe you're only coming on board to this child abuse in schools, you can download our parent guide and speak to your TD, your public rep, your teacher, principal, or the mommies next door at the school gate. So we're launching those three things very soon, but we need funding for the
Mm-hmm.
paper, the ink, and the travel cost around the country to do our events. So if anybody wants to donate, they can
Mm-hmm.
go to naturalwomen'scouncil.ie.
Yes, and that's an important point as well, because unfortunately, you would think the good guys or the good girls would have, legions of people queuing up behind them to say, yeah, get out there and protect our children. Unfortunately, the opposite is true. It seems to be the NGOs are the ones with the deep
Correct.
pockets and millions of euro getting their activists out
Yeah.
there to shut our kids down. So if
Yes.
you are listening in, a lot of this work, most people are doing it, without any backer
Hmm.
or without any recompense per se, but it costs money to print flyers and
Hmm.
distribute stuff out and, organize things.
Yeah.
So if you're listening in and you want to show some actual support, go on there to the website, Natural Women's Council.ie. Is that correct? And,
.ie or .com. We
or
bought
dot
both
com.
domains. It'll get you there.
It'll get you there. So anyway, that's just to make people aware of what you do and the fact that you're labouring hard on it. So for now, anyway, really appreciate your time this morning. No doubt this is just another chapter in the ongoing saga of what you're trying to do. So we'll stay in touch, and we'll keep listeners updated as to what you're about. But for now, Jana Lunden, thank you very much. And I'm Rick Munn, No Risk, No Reward Media, over and out.